Ladies and gentlemen, I have the great good fortune to bring to you today a really wonderful, interesting poet and artist, Emily Cordes, a woman of many, many talents, a woman of mystery, a woman who you should know. Emily, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Rick. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, it's my honor, believe me. You know, uh, we've had so many wonderful poets, each one with their own unique kind of startup or backstory. Talk to us a little bit about when were you first just totally captured by writing and decided you needed to write?
I've been writing pretty much since I was probably like a teenager, preteen. I've been writing poetry and short stories and various different things since then. I was a little more prolific during my with that during my teens and late 20s, and then I kind of had to put some of that on the back burner as I was, a little more focused on grad school and things like that. But I picked it back up again more recently thanks to my involvement with the New Eurekan Poets Cafe and the online poetry community. Thanks to that, I've sort of gotten back into writing more regularly. And thanks to that, I was prolific enough to gather enough material to publish my first book of poetry, and met my publisher through the online community. So it's something that I've, kind of gotten back to in recent years, and it's definitely picked up a lot more momentum.
Let me ask you, was there a teacher? Was there a poet that you read as a young person that said, "Wow, this is really neat. I need to try exploring that."
Um, I think not specifically a poet, but my favorite author is the author Francesca Leah Block. She is a magical realist contemporary author. She's written some poetry as well, but she does a lot of novels and stories, a lot of which is magical realist stuff set in contemporary Los Angeles. And
Ah,
I've always really admired her writing, and admired her just as the kind of a role model and a human being. But she's someone who was able to really be very lush and poetic, but with, very select amount of words. She's kind of minimalist, but also very poetic. And she's someone who's able to really take her whole life experience and use it as material and inspiration. I think that's something that I aspire to as well.
one of my uh, kind of launching pads was in back in seventh grade in middle school. Uh, Kind of out of the blue, when you hear you're going to study poetry, everybody's eyes kind of glaze over, and it just seemed more artificial than anything else. But she challenged us right out of the box and said, write a poem about Native Americans. And I thought it was auspicious to mention it today on Indigenous
Yeah.
Peoples Day. And I wrote a poem that, believe it or not, I remember to this day. And it just struck me. One of the things that I like about poetry is that ability where, with a minimum of words, you can convey so much words more than those words might otherwise convey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Let me just share a little bit with you. I think you may find it amusing. I put humor in that very first poem. As I go hunting for the bear, my hunting bow and arrows I wear. I see the bear go to its cave to corner me. Oh, what a knave. I put an arrow on my bow. I swiftly bend and let it go. The arrow barely pierced his side, but even that could break his stride. The bear slowed down and then he stopped. By then, I think I could have dropped. The bear stood still and looked at me, and I knew this had to be the end.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's a good one. I like the rhythm of it. I like the and it does, like you were saying, it does sort of just convey the essence of the experience and of the moment and the hunt. So that's great.
One of my other favorite writers is Italo Calvino. Are you
Mm.
familiar with his work?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh my goodness. Every once in a while, you feel like you've reached a plateau, you want to be inspired, you need to do the next thing. And
Hmm.
I came across his book Cosmic Comics,
Oh
which,
yeah. I've seen a stage version of that actually.
oh,
I've
no kidding.
Yeah, there's a company I really like called New Stage Theater. Some of my friends have performed with them, and they've done a stage version of Cosmocomics.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Did you draw it as he suggests? Did you draw the comic?
No, no, they didn't, I didn't. It was
They
just sort of
acted out, yeah.
it was
And
inspired.
that's
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Well, I liked his work a lot. But enough about this. So your first writing, was it autobiographical, what we might call relationship oriented? Was it sociographic? How did you get started when you started writing? What field did you plow, so we say?
Um, well, I've always used just kind of personal experience in my writing in some form or another. I know I have written about different relationships with people, friends, partners, family, things like that. But when I was especially younger, I wrote a lot more about like social issues, especially as like kind of a idealistic teenager. I wrote a lot about like vegetarianism and social
Oh,
justice,
neat.
gun violence, and kind of like all the stuff I saw in the world that was troubling me, and I wanted to like make a statement about it.
Did you do you still have those poems about, say, vegetarianism and stuff like that?
Um, I don't know if I actually have copies of them, and frankly, there are some that should like probably never see the light of day.
Well,
But I do
that's not
remember
untrue. I understand.
that I did this. My first kind of foray into slam poetry was I think when I was a freshman in high school. My high school for a short time had a slam poetry team, and we competed at a
Wow.
few different events. And I wrote this poem called, I don't really remember it all, but there's this poem called, it was called Veggie Girl, and it was about like a vegetarian superhero like who travels the world to like take down McDonald's and like educate people about vegetarianism and stuff like that. It was this whole like kind of silly like persona.
That's fun. That's fun for sure, for sure. Now, when you got to college, did you go into literature or were you studying something else?
I majored in theater, but English and literature were kind of like, they weren't like my official minor, but they were kind of like my secondary interest and pursuit. And
Yeah.
I did take a fair bit of like English lit classes. I Shakespeare classes. I took a poetry course at Amherst College, which was very good. I went to Smith College for my undergrad, and Amherst was part of the five college consortium, which was basically, it was Smith and five other schools in the same general area. And if you went to one, you could cross register for stuff at the
Is
other.
it the Seven Sisters?
Smith's the Seven Sister College, but it's also part of the five college consortium, which is just like five schools in Western Massachusetts that are all kind of in the same general area, like maybe 30 minutes from each other.
My daughter went to Holyoke.
Hey, cool. Yeah, yeah. That was a seven sister and five college as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A wonderful school. We looked at Smith. We didn't go to Amherst, but we sort of traveled around in the area, and everything I've always heard about it, that it was an absolutely wonderful school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. I really had a great experience in college. I really loved my time at Smith, and I did some very good. Like I did a lot of five college theater too, and I did some plays at Moho as well that I really enjoyed.
Let me ask you, you've mentioned theater a couple times. I'm wondering, do you gravitate toward the performance part of it, the writing part of it, the tech part of it, the producing part of it? What part of theater, or is it all parts of theater?
Well, I'm a performer first and foremost. I'm an actress. That's kind of my main passion. But more recently, I've kind of been dipping my toe into writing and producing. If I don't know if you know anything about devised theater. Should I
No,
explain
no,
that?
you'd mentioned it for me before, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, but devised theater, like sort of co-creating theater with others, like as part of the rehearsal process. And I've sort of been doing that a little bit more recently, writing and co-creating plays in that manner and producing them. My most recent one, I produced a devised play about the fetishization of mentally ill women that went up in March 2022 in NYC. And that was kind of my first time producing a play of my own at kind of like a higher level. Like we were in a professional theater. We got grant money for it. We got reviews for it. It was kind of putting on my big girl panties where that was concerned. And I definitely like to keep doing that. I have a plan to sort of continue.
The nice thing about producing is you have a little more control than you do at the tail end as an actor. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. That's really wonderful. I can only imagine how exciting that was to be in that stimulating intellectual environment, to do leading edge kind of theater. Oh my goodness. If I was a person that allowed jealousy, I would be jealous.
It was a lot of fun. It was just really gratifying. I mean, it was a lot of work to be fair, but it was just really gratifying to get to bring that to life. And I had a really awesome just team of people on board. So it was just such a fun experience.
There's nothing like hearing people use your words, you know. Pretty neat stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Neat and a little
that
disorienting, but yeah.
wasn't quite the way I wanted that read.
Or more like, oh my God, I can't believe it sounds like that. Or, oh my God, I can't believe it sounds like that. It's like equal parts,
Sure,
like this is brilliant and equal parts. Oh my God, what have I written?
sure. Well, you know, writing is a very revelatory experience, and
Mhm.
you know what you have and you're bringing forth. Um, you know, we all strive to show something that's for the good. You know.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, what have you been writing recently?
So the most recent thing I've been focusing on is that as I mentioned, I have a poetry book that was published last November, Armful of Poppies, and I'm working on a second book, which is actually going to be using the tarot as a stylistic motif, structural motif. It's going to be called Queen of Swords. And
Ah,
I'm trying to like amass enough material for it.
wow,
I'm hoping to do at least 56 poems, one for each card in the minor arcana, maybe
my
70 total
goodness.
if I'm feeling ambitious. Right now I've got like maybe about like 46 so far, so I'm pretty close.
No kidding. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. You know, that's another area of just your amazing intellect and interest. You have been involved with experiments with tarot, studying tarot, and doing tarot readings for people. Um, Obviously, you see a connection between the thread, the story of tarot, the story that you tell in a reading, with the story that you as a writer tell. Um, did that come quick, or was that a gradual kind of epiphany?
Um, I think it was a little bit of both. So the the idea for the book came from a poem that I had written called Queen of Swords that was sort of, you know, it was more along the themes of that card and sort of like similar circumstances that I was going through in my life at that time, kind of like having to, you know, pick up a pick up the proverbial sword and defend my beliefs and stand my ground and set boundaries and things like that. And
Good for you. Good for
thank you, thank
you.
you. And later on, so Trisha De Jesus, aka Finn Bell, she's another friend of mine through the online poetry community, and she reached out to some people she knew to host. She does through her online platform Fincabulary. She hosts monthly poetry games workshops, which are basically, you know, kind of like hosting workshops to write around a theme with different prompts. And she was asking people, she was looking to fill her roster for the next year, and she reached out to me in winter of like 2021, 22, and was asking like if you have any ideas. And I thought, you know, I was already sort of thinking, you know, with tarot in mind, and I was thinking that would be a great opportunity for a workshop because the cards have so much like symbolism and archetypes that they're really great jumping off points for writing prompts and poetic inspiration. And I was just like, I've been reading the cards since I was 13. I can really speak in depth about them. So I think it would be a really great thing around which to host a poetry workshop. And I pitched it to her and she thought it was great. And it was really, I hosted my first one in August of this past year. It was of 2022. And it was really well received. So Mark Fishbein from the Poetry Global Network, he invited me to host a couple of more under his platform too. So I don't have any standing plans to do additional ones, but hopefully there will be more opportunities for me to offer these again because people really seem to like them. So I would, and I love teaching them. So I'd love to, kind of keep offering these.
Well, I think it's really such an interesting amalgam to sort of combine the idea of a reading
Mhm.
via interpretive poetry. How interesting! Very nice, very nice. Having done some experiments myself in that arena, I have every serious supportive interest in your work that way as well. Um, would you be up for sharing some of your recent work?
Yeah, sure. I can actually let me pull this up, but I can read the poem Queen of Swords that
Oh, how
I
lovely!
yeah, and I have some other stuff I could share as well. Okay. In the wise words of wise words, poets wield their gifts like swords, to knight the worthy or cut as they choose. Used justly, they'll illuminate. Used carelessly, can obfuscate. Used cruelly, can impale or maim or bruise. I've been the queen of cups, chalice offered up in love, been queen of wands with fiery torch ablaze. I've nurtured empress gardens and unwound the devil's snares, but this tower's crumbling and it's time to raise. So I'll unsheath my sword, hoist it high, and say no more, to protect or sever as befits the day. Toxic tongues hiss in my ear, wormy thoughts of hate or fear. I shrug them off. My court is not their place. And I'll be just, but won't adjust my borders to house bullshit from fools who won't accept their proper station. And my queendom will be beacon for my kindred cross the globe, the people of the quill and brush and stage. And with our sword pens brandished, we'll inscribe in air and fire 1,000 different worlds of our creation.
Excellent, excellent. Bravo, bravo. I really like that.
Thank you.
What an interesting experiment. I have those in different parts of my brain, so I haven't ever meshed them together. How wonderful. The potential obviously is just endless. 78 by 78 at least.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
what
not
other
everything in my collection is going to be about the specific cards. I mean, but it's going to be using the tarot as the structural motif. I'm going to have each section named after one of the minor arcana suits, swords, swords, cups, wands, and pentacles. And each of the poems in each section is going to be sort of under the same themes of those suits, like emotions, intellect, inspiration, earth, and material things. So it's going to be a little more thematically structured, even though I'm going to have a few poems that are based on specific cards. It's not going to be exclusively that.
wonderful, what an interesting idea. And it seems to me that it reaches out to a couple different audiences, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice, very nice. What else do you have you can share? I'll give you a warning when there's like 3 minutes left. So if you want to go ahead and find another one or two to read, that we would
Okay.
enjoy it for sure.
Okay. Let's see what's good here. I have a couple of newer ones that I can read. One is one that I just wrote as sort of like a tribute to my friend who is a musician and body worker. And I have another one. I have a 10 haiku set about my love hate relationship with social media. So we've got like, okay, so it's like 3:52 now. I'll read the first one that I wrote for my friend, and then if we have time I'll do the haikus. Okay. This is called Abrazado. Angel's trumpet, shaman's hands, eleva mi cuerpo, call my spirit home again. Your reveille awakens me each morning, each rising sun a portal to rebirth, reminding me that peace begins within us. Y con el fe y con la gracia juntos, construimos un cielito here on earth. Your agua de estrellas, a repeated incantation, played on a loop to calm mi corazón. or the bass pounding heartbeats of your dance sets, reverbs so deep it feels like they're my own. Ecstatic communion spread out across the planet. From the jungles to the mountains, chosen families converge. The music is the medicine, bonds formed in sweat and ecstasy. 1,000 bodies rising, voices merge. We learn to trust en este largo caminar, that when we walk together, sé que vamos a llegar. Each year, your hands and songs return to hold me. New meanings and new dawns with every turn. A force moves across my skin like water soothing, earth to ground me, a balm for every large and tiny burn. Celebrations at each apex, benedictions before battle, unwinding muscles coiled with cold or hardened for defense. Winged heels in constant motion, calves spasm pinched and tense. An urban pollinator seeding blossoms in cement. My place is here, yours soaring round the planet. Un condor siempre pasando, keeping pace throughout the seasons, gifting us the beat and the joy of simply being, without mandate or apology, our only task to inhale and receive. Give my small hands the fire of los ancestros, the strength to hold my people high and send them off with love. I'll lift my candle, raise my cup in darkness that surrounds us, dance when I'm cracked wide open in the freedom and the blood. Strip bandages like 7 veils, unpeeling every layer. Glide in on blistered feet in reverent grace. Palms opened ever outward, lifted up to greet the heavens, to bestow and to implore and to embrace. The hands through which we pass flow like the rivers of our lives, de los que nos dan a la luz, to those that shut our eyes. And if the spirit moving us can pass between los manos, I'll be forever blessed to pass entre tuyos, hermano. So may our souls keep dancing in the ether, on the floor, the touch, the key to open every door.
Oh, that's beautiful. Really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
Enjoyed it
you.
very much.
Thank you.
This will be the end of part 1,
Okay.
and we'll come back and do part 2 and let you tell us a few more. That's wonderful, Emily. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Thank you. This is fun. Thank you.
Good, good. So let me know. You said 5 or whatever. Let me know when you're available back, and we'll reconnect. I'll do that reading I promised you to.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Wonderful. Have a good afternoon. Bye bye.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Hello, Emily.
What's up?
Good things, good things. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the great good fortune to be back with my friend Emily Cordes. Emily, welcome again to Poets of the East.
Hi.
Emily, we only invite the best poets. Poets with stories to tell, poets who have that wonderful gift of sharing their work. Because performance poetry is different than just written poetry, and those who are gifted with that special spark to share, you have such a great drama background that must help your performance poetry.
Yeah, I think that definitely coming at this as a performer to begin with is kind of it does sort of make it it informs my poetry and is kind of a logical leap to do poetry readings. I'm performing my poetry is kind of a newer thing for me, but I definitely think there is a sense of like I'm sort of finding my style and my voice and my rhythm in it, and I think a lot of that does kind of blend into the work I do in theater as well, kind of like your sort of what's your on stage persona and things like that.
So many times I really love hearing poets read their own work But sometimes, people who don't have a sense of presentation, I know I've heard many, many poets, too many, unfortunately, who just read their work in a monotone like they were just trying to get through it quick. Part of that's probably paranoia. but but when you see a poet and hear a poet who can present, who can really, put some energy into it, like yourself, for example, it's just such a pleasure. It helps to convey the work, to convey the images, the rhythm, the music of the poetry. So tell me, before we get started with a few more pieces, do you have any projects coming up that we should know about? Any, perhaps a new book coming out?
Um, well, I do have, like I had mentioned, I have the book Queen of Swords forthcoming. I'm still working on it, but it will eventually be published. And I have my current book Armful of Poppies, which is available through Red or Green Books. You can look it up online, or you
What's
can
that title again?
Armful of Poppies.
Oh, how lovely! How lovely! That has quite a visual punch to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I gotta ask. I'm a symbol guy, poppies. What made you choose poppies?
That was actually I actually chose them for a reason. So the title poem for that, which I can read, I just need to get a copy of my book there. I wrote it after I got my second vaccine, and the idea of poppies as a sign, I wore it, well, poppies as a sign of remembrance, and they can also represent, healing, sleep. They can also represent death or oblivion, or they can be morphine, they can be heroin, they can be, they can be something that heals us or poisons us. And a lot of the poems in that collection were written during 2020, 2021. And I was thinking a lot about, kind of the pandemic and how the its capacity to bring out both the worst and the best in people. And I was thinking about, as the vaccines became available and the world sort of came back to life, like, what kind of a world are we creating for ourselves in the aftermath of this? Are we creating something new and beautiful infused with what we've learned from the pandemic, or are we just sort of perpetuating more of the same and going back to sleep? So that was where a lot of that came from. And a lot of the poems in that collection, a lot of my poems center on kind of the duality of nature, the duality of existence, sort of death and rebirth, and a lot of similar themes along those same lines.
Excellent, excellent. A beautiful selected title, very much so. And that's available now through Red and Green Books, a wonderful publishing house. And then let me ask the next book coming out, The Queen of Swords, are you thinking maybe mid 2023 or?
Hopefully, ideally. I think it just depends on when I'm able to finish getting like the enough material compiled, and I'm, reaching out to publishers again. So I'm aiming to get it done by yeah, mid next year, but nothing's been set in stone just yet.
Well, it's a really exciting project. I wish you every success with it. Really very, very interesting to mix that whole symbol language that is Tarot with the heart and art of a poet. Bravo, bravo. Well, my dear, how about another poem or two, huh? Wonderful. Bring it forward just a little bit. There we go. Very nice.
We're
Very
angling this
nice.
over here, yeah. Okay, cool.
Lovely artwork too.
Yeah, Shane Manier is the cover artist. Marissa at Red or Green Books set me up with her. She did just an amazing job. I gave her the concept of like the vines being like veins in our arms, and she just took it and rolled with it so beautifully.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Now, a lot of times when we do our readings in the Zoom arena, we're kept to 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes. My dear, stretch out. Read a nice one. Read the one you didn't get a chance to read because you were forced down to 3 minutes. Okay, so anything you want to read, be my guest.
Cool. Okay, well, I definitely would like to read the title poem from my book, and some new stuff. If I have a little more time, maybe I'll read some other book things. But I've got some ideas. So all right.
Wonderful.
Okay, this one's Armful of Poppies. I roll up my sleeve as the needle approaches. Old t-shirt from Giverny, Monet's poppies blaze open, adorned in remembrance of a world rendered comatose, fairy tale beauties by evil force frozen, yet piercingly lucid as thorned vines grew over us. Awakened by pinprick, can spells be thus broken? Now my shoulder blooms red, tiny blossom unfolding, a miniature miracle caught in stop motion. Small as a poppy seed, powerfully potent, birthing dreams of a better world steeped in devotion, or a return to ignorance, rush for the comfort zone? Will we trade hard won clarity for dull myopia? But each century's plague bears its own ring of roses and scar tissue stronger than flesh that's unbroken. As the earth in her wisdom yields our cures and our opiates, may our poppy-filled arms carry emblems of hope.
Oh, that's lovely.
Thank
Really
you.
lovely.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read a more recent haiku set I wrote about my love-hate relationship with social media. I called this
Wonderful.
I call this social anxiety media, 10 haikus.
Ha, ha.
Existential dread. If we weren't tagged in a post, were we even there? Social feedback loop. Share of shared share. Rose is rose is rose. Self-care irony. Skipped event to get some sleep. FOMO scroll till dawn. Photo tag alert. Self-esteem Russian roulette. 4, 3, 2, 1, click. Cannot be unseen. Bad pics can be scrubbed from feed, not so much from brain. Once shared, thrice removed. Each repost expands the gap from the lived event. Words are flowing out. Endless rain in paper cup. No, that's just my feed. Longing for the days when trees fell in forests and soul tweets came from birds. Heathen God demands, pay your tithe in likes and shares. Do it for the gram. Funny memes. Yeah, thanks. So sorry. Funny memes, cat pics, life updates from distant friends. Damn it, guess I'll stay. That's my haikus.
Very nice. Very nice. May I read one of my COVID poems for you?
Yeah, yeah.
This this was from early during COVID,
Mhm.
and we were in lockdown so much and only seeing friends, behind the old glass screen.
Mhm.
So I was inspired to write this. I think you might get a chuckle out of it. It's called Down from the Trees.
Mm.
Honey, baby, tell me, please, since we're really not that long down from the trees, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, up in the branches or down on deeply polished floors. We like reciprocal, you and me. Ever since we balanced on the limbs of a tree, whether out in the car or up in a tree, I'll groom you and you groom me. The only thing now that's left for us as the virus sets a fence between what we really feel and what we really mean, with you so far away on the other side of the glowing screen another day, we wave weakly. How I miss your sweet perfume and the many ways, darling, you decorate a room. The distance mars our love sealed up behind the screen's glass wall, untouched. Oh, honey, baby, tell me, please, since we're really not that long down from the trees, I wish you were here to find and pluck off all my fleas. We're isolated, out of touch, and miles away, my fingers clutch in disarray, my clothes askew. Oh, what I wouldn't give for you to have your seat beside me here. with your fingers searching my matted hair, even to have you look with scorn at the clothes piled across the room that I've worn. I'd even eat the toast you burn if I could beside you touch you and warmly turn.
I love that. It's like, yeah, it's clever and it's also poignant. I really like that.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, more Emily, please. More.
Okay, let me see what I got here. Maybe read some more from my book here.
Please do.
Okay, what do we got? What do we got? Okay, so we'll go with the online theme here. This is, let me find it. It's called Nezar, or Eyes on You and Me. It's about my brief foray into online dating.
Wow, that must be so exciting.
It was interesting. Okay. Blue iris, white pupil, vigilant, unblinking, adorning wrists and blessing rear view mirrors. I wear mine on a mask, embedded in a heart. Come hither, but not too close. A standing invitation couched inside cobalt corona, a curtain slung across windows of my soul. Apotropaic, I describe it, that word itself a ward against the trolls and fuckboys too lazy to use Google, because real eyes realize real lies, and only men with huge and throbbing vocabularies need apply. One can never be too careful when hungry eyes surround you, when glances can curse and praise contaminates as easily as breath expelling it. Surrender your defenses. There's no telling what slips in. And these eyes across the years, bloodshot with scorn and tears, have seen enough to seal me shut for good. But it's better than what's left becomes when the but it's better than what's left when the mirror's unblinking surface becomes the void into which you gaze, confronting you with everything and nothing you contain. So I suit up for the battle, line my eyes with smoky shadow, stare into my laptop camera's fixed eye, and try.
Very nice. Very nice. You wove so much together there, you know, the hope, the fear, the anxiety, the joy, the potential. Very well done. Very well done.
Thank you. Awesome. Just sort of flipping through here. Do you have time for anything else, or
Yes, please.
all right, cool.
We have 15 more minutes at least, my dear. Please.
Hey, all right, cool. Flipping through. All right, nice. Flipping through here through my book, see what else we got.
Take a minute. No problem at all.
Okay. There were definitely, yeah, I have a couple ones that I wrote. As I mentioned, I sort of started out with the online community from the Nuyorican Poets Cafe has been a very huge source of inspiration and influence and opportunity, and very close friendship as well for me. And a lot of which is reflected in my book. I've written several poems about the experience, so I can read a couple of those.
Please.
Cool. So on the open mics at the Nuyorican, whenever someone is debuting a new poem, we all go like new shit. We all call it new shit. So I wrote a poem called New Shit. Okay. New shit, who dis? My inner perfectionist dies in fire that we spit. Ego's gonna shit some bricks, but self-judgment stones and sticks when my truth can't be eclipsed. Fuck the need to be so precious. Got no time for second guesses. Lay it out now, hot and fresh, from the cat's ass, speaker says. In the Zoom mirrors, we're reflected, hearts exposed and unprotected. But like cookie dough and sex, it's the raw stuff that's the best. Mondays, Thursdays on the mic, lighting up my COVID nights. Even when shit hits, we're tight. even mandates from on high, petty fucks who suck us dry, politicians oozing spite, can't extinguish our shared light. Later, as I lie in bed, new shit's forming in my head, notes apps filling A to Z, chapbooks lined up to be read, till the day we slam again. So pass the mic like blunt and lighter, spark it like the Energizer. Thank you, fam, for this reminder. Shit can become fertilizer.
Very nice, very nice.
And I wrote a, what? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, allow me just a touch of editorializing. I know colloquial language is marvelous. I only wonder just a little if when the phrase new shit,
Mhm.
people need to appreciate their own art. And I'm afraid, just a little afraid, even though it's colloquial language and I understand that, I wish people wouldn't say that just because I want them to love and respect their own work. You know what I mean? And
Sound a little pejorative, yeah.
it does. It just maybe my ears are ancient. I get that, um, but I have to say your work is so lovely. It is so precious. The last thing in the world I would compare it to is even that fertile part of fertilizer. Enough said.
Fair
I
enough.
just wanted you to hear that because your work is so good.
Thank
Okay.
you. Oh, thank you. Um, I wrote a few other things about sort of once we got to gather in person again, just kind of the thrill of all of that. Um, I have I have a couple ones. I have one called Supper Club about the very first like sort of get together I had with some other poets, and I have one called After Party Alchemy about our very first
Please
party
do.
back in the day. All
Please
right.
do.
Okay, so this one's called Supper Club. The first of many suppers in a hot poet summer. Zoom dazed eyes were getting number, each heartbeat a lonely drummer, till a brunch became, what's up? Virus twilight turned to sunrise. Now it's real life, dropping real rhymes. Notebooks passed around the table, serve it up like chips con queso. Double dipping, now it's safe to throw it back. We're vaxxed, relaxed, out the gate, ready for action. Got the munchies, now in bunches, we snack attack, a gut reaction. Like brujas round the cauldron, we mix this stone soup, each one adding to the brew, cooking up a feast for you. Poetic sancocho nourishing our souls, little verde in our bowls, past the greens, that's how we roll. And words can bring the bitter herbs, but that's okay. Can't salt our game. We'll shake and strain, mix with lime and tequila till we shoot it down again. Light the grill, it's time for summer with my hot poetic friends. And as Gaia as our witness, we won't go hungry again.
Bravo, bravo.
Thank you.
Let me say this. I don't know how tight your schedule is. What I would say right now is do another one. That'll be a final one.
Okay.
But our little experiment in this will be after we finish our recording.
Okay. Awesome. Sounds good.
Would you like to offer us a final one, Emily?
Sure. This one is called After Party Alchemy. This was written in honor of the very first in-person gathering we had at the cafe after things reopened. We came and saw, and we reclaimed a cold and empty cavern filled with light and sound again. Drum beats calling the orishas, bodies flickering like flames, and on folding table crucifixes second feasts were laid. Ciphers conjured in the backyard, sacred plants and incantations, and presiding from the rafters all the spirits of this place, dressed up in their dusty finery, put glory on display. As we ran our hands in reverence o'er the bricks our words sustained, and they whispered back in confidence the echoes of the ages. Hearts and causes long abandoned pulsed with newfound inspiration, as we followed in the footsteps of the legends of the stage. Even now, we self-dubbed poets struggle to articulate smirks and nods to secret gatherings in undisclosed locations, mask the wonder that surrounded us, a shared and private grace of this unforetold admission to a consecrated space. Even though the road that brought me here lays pockmarked with old pain, and the memories creep unbidden, won't stay buried in the basement, still a shift's been set in motion, lifeblood coursing through dry veins, or a transubstantiation, we the vine, the fig, the grapes, an alchemic transformation, gold from metals harsh and base, discontented winters over, and our summers come again, as the voices of the people rise from silence once again.
Oh, that's beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
There's a reverence there, you know, that sense of a communion again, and it's very, very lovely. I really enjoy your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining me. It's been such an honor to have you here at Poets of the East. You are a gift to the world of poetry. Keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm just honored to get to, be on this. I really appreciate it.
Well, good. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the good fortune to have with me today a tremendously amazing poet from the Caribbean, a young woman named Marianne Tefft. And she has just a wonderful, whimsical voice of poetry, and she's an educator. We love our educators. That's what builds tomorrow's civilization, people who are educators. So thank you. Thank you for all of that work. I even got a chance to meet your class briefly the other day, and that was amazing. That was really amazing. So Marianne, welcome.
Thank you, Rick. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So Marianne, you're in Sint Maarten?
Sint Maarten. Sint Maarten. We say it the Dutch way. We live on the Dutch side.
Okay. Now, you're out there in the Caribbean, having lived in Florida for about 40 years. I know what it's like to be in the Caribbean sometimes during that period from May until November.
Yes,
Very thrilling. At this point in time, I have survivor guilt, but that's another story. My wife and I went through with our kids, Andrew.
Oh my.
In the zone. And so we lived without power for 2 months and water and phones and all that stuff. So I know how it is. You're a brave woman to have lived, I gather, much of your life there?
Well, I've been here for the past 20 years. I came to the Caribbean in 2002 from Toronto. And it was meant to be maybe a little adventure. And anyway, still 21 years later, almost, here I am. Yes.
Oh, how nice.
Like you, I have the experience of hurricane survival, entirely too many. And in 2017, we watched our island nearly disappear under Irma. That was,
wow.
I pray none of us experiences this again.
But, I used to tell people, up until Hurricane Andrew, living in Florida, when you said hurricane, the next word was usually party. But you know what? After Andrew, the words hurricane and party weren't spending time together so much.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So tell me, this wonderful writer, author, artist, probably, I'm sure, when did you start thinking of yourself as a person who was an artist? when did you pick up the pen or pick up the typewriter or whatever? Tell me about young Marianne.
Well, I guess I've loved words from the beginning. As a kid, I used to love to sit on the weekends with my mother's mother, who came to the United States from Poland in 1902. She was 14 years old. She never
Wow.
saw her parents again. And one of her great prides was learning English and sitting with her grandchildren and playing Scrabble and doing crossword puzzles and things. She gave me my first crossword puzzle dictionary when I was a kid. So I'm the bad one. If the crossword puzzle goes missing and it's been done in ink, okay, guilty as charged. That's me. So I've loved that from young. I remember very clearly running off to kindergarten and discovering Madeleine, the little girl, the little French girl from those ancient books. And I came running home and told my mother, I learned to read. And my mother told me, she was pretty busy as people were in those days, running the house with 3 kids. And she told me, oh no, you've memorized that. Well, I was sure I had learned to read. So I waited to ambush my dad when he got home, and I managed to drag him into a rocking chair that I still have in my sister's home in England
How nice.
after all these years. My parents married in 1950, and their rocker is still with the family. Well, I got my dad into that chair, and he managed to listen to me read a book to him when I had come home from day one in kindergarten. And I guess I
Oh,
really
nice.
got the bug a little later in grade 6. My grade 6 principal read out over the PA system a paper that I had written, and that was pretty cool. Yeah,
Wow.
in that same period, I was born in New England, in Connecticut, and raised in New England until middle school times when my parents moved to the Pacific Northwest. And one of my great pleasures as a kid was the Friday assembly, which unfortunately has gone its way. But we used to get together and sing, and they would flash the words of popular songs up on on a screen or on the wall in the lunchroom. And every class had to memorize. There were 2 kids who
Oh,
were
how
trotted out every
wonderful.
Friday to memorize poems. And I still have. I was never the one to memorize Casey at the bat or something like that. But I still have, in Flanders Fields and a little bit of Oh Captain, My Captain, and those sorts of poems, Stopping by Woods. I still have them in my heart.
Oh,
And
yeah.
once you get this under your skin, that's it. Um, yeah, I guess I've loved words from the beginning, and as I went along, I enjoyed English very much in school. I loved languages in general. I learned to speak French pretty well. And as a high school student, I was an exchange student, and my German then was pretty good as I
Oh, how
lived
wonderful.
in, yeah, I lived in a town outside of Zurich for a year. It's unfortunately really gone its way now, but I've always loved words and languages and cultures and so forth. And somehow I got the idea in high school to go to journalism school, which is what I did. And
Good for you.
went to journalism school in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, where my parents were living by then. They were living in Toronto. And I had a first career in magazine journalism in Canada. And when my only daughter, whom some of you know from some of our open mics, was just a child, she went to a Montessori school. And that style of education began to speak to me. And I went back to school in 2000, became a Montessori teacher, and changed careers entirely. And that's my daylight job now. That's my day job,
Yeah, right,
Montessori
right.
teacher. And then I've kept a finger and a full hand really in writing something all these years.
So let me ask you, I know so many of us have more than one art form that we love, that we enjoy. Do you have another? Do you sketch? Do you paint? Do you make music? Anything else in your repertoire?
I have over the course of time, sort of dabbled with things only for my own amusement because I've always liked to write and then, you sketch a little something beside. I've always enjoyed doing that. I had the pleasure through some mutual friends of meeting a composer and I did some lyric writing for a few years, and
Oh, how
we brought
nice.
out about we brought out about 5 songs and wrote maybe 50 together over the course of time. So that was kind of a cool thing to segue into
Yeah.
lyric writing. But I guess my only other art form is I do, since I've lived in the Caribbean, I do love to dance. I love to dance salsa and all of the Latin dances, really, also the dances of the French Caribbean. So that's really my other art, if you want to say so.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I had grown up in outside of Pittsburgh
Uh-huh.
in a very ethnic arena. My family heritage is Eastern European, so I'm a Slovak, and up there, even still, or at least into the early 50s and 60s, that national American hyphen identity was very important. Food, dance, music, that sort of thing, and uh, it the one thing that I noticed when I moved to Miami for high school, and the thing I liked so much about Hispanic culture is that when you go to a Hispanic concert, um, everybody's dancing to the music. The little ones, the teenagers, the middle-aged folks, and the seniors. They're all dancing the salsa or the merengue or whatever. And
Exactly.
having seen in, should we say, Western American culture such sharp divides
Mhm.
in music and music identification and certainly dance, um, I just thought that was so neat. And
Me too.
you see much the same thing I think in other Caribbean cultures as well.
Mhm,
Everybody's
mhm.
dancing to the same music, and that's
Exactly.
really nice. That's
Exactly.
really nice.
Yeah.
Um, I have to ask you because I have probably 1.5 feet over in journalism. What
Yeah.
kind of journalism were you doing?
As it happened, I ended up doing a lot of travel writing, and I was involved in hospitality and tourism primarily.
Ah,
Yeah, I did a lot of business writing as well in general, feature writing, advertorial, speech writing, all kinds of things, news releases and backgrounders and things for mostly independent business because I worked at a newspaper called the Financial Post based out of Toronto when it was a weekly newspaper, and it's a financial daily now in Toronto. And I covered independent business there. So when I
oh, neat.
became a freelancer for about 15 years, I kind of stuck in that area. And the last job I did in that area before I transitioned into being a Montessori teacher, I ran the in-flight magazine for Canadian Airlines before they merged with American Airlines.
So you got a chance as a feature writer, if you
Yes.
will, to write all kinds of interesting stories that probably a lot of which you decided on. That's wonderful.
Yeah, sure. At that, at those times, often. But as a newspaper writer, also, I was assigned everything from, auto care. And I'm one of those kind of people. If you ask me what kind of car I have, I say it's a white one. That's me and what I know about automotive.
Sure.
The New Year's baby. It doesn't matter what it was. You did all kinds of things as working nights in a busy daily newsroom and that was great. But what I loved about that experience, I think, it really does inform my writing today. I am not, everything I write is not deathless prose, but I write and I write easily, and I'm not a person who is blocked,
Right.
really. Because, when you have a deadline looming in 46 minutes, you don't get that luxury
Yeah.
and you get used to putting hands on the keyboard or pen to paper and getting the job done. And I have so many long years of that kind of experience. It stood me in good stead. And I feel in poetry as well as in songwriting, but in different ways, the close observation that you have to make and the kinds of questioning and the way of trying to show, not tell, those kind of fundamentals that we have as writers and certainly as feature writers. um, that kind of training has stood me in very good stead, and I find that it's part of my toolkit today too.
I hear you. I hear you. I I was, I'm going to say, disappointed in a way. When I was very young, I knew I had to write, But when I would go to bookstores or libraries and see books about writing, they gave instructions and suggestions that I thought I was completely out of sympathy with. They said, you know, find one of the popular topics and write to that popular topic. Well, the last thing in the world I wanted to write about was popular topics. I wanted to be allow my muse to speak out.
Yeah.
And but the one part that I did take to heart was practice. Right, 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 right,
Okay.
right, 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 right.
Yes, yes, yes. I
Because this
agree.
way, when the muse does come to visit, you're prepared. You
Exactly.
can do it.
Exactly. Yes.
One of the funniest
It's
things
the practice. It's the habit of writing. Yeah.
when I found myself called upon to write marketing prose, which I spent about 10 years doing marketing. I
Sure.
had a dickens of a time until I figured out what worked for me was I would write the most cynical, sarcastic version of it. And once I got that out of my head, then I could
Yeah.
write any kind of marketing
Then you get.
clap trap that was required.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you
Many of
this.
us as writers have been there.
Yeah. So you live in the Caribbean. Do you find that um, obviously you draw a lot of inspiration from that kind of life experience?
Yes,
Do you
absolutely.
do you find yourself writing in a few particular areas? Like, do you have some grooves, like the cultural riff, the scenery riff, or do you have just a wide range of topics that you typically treat?
Well, my first poetry collection, Full Moon Fire, is really romantic poems, but not completely romantic. I should say that they are love songs. Spoken songs of love is the
Oh,
the
nice.
subtitle, and the book is a series of 40 poems that follow the trajectory of the moon through its phases. So
Ah,
I look at the phases of love. Um, so I'm very inspired, of course, by the moon. I'm a July-born moonchild. My second collection is called Moonchild. But so there's always that. Love is always a strong theme, of course, and moonlight. Um, I'm writing more now as I feel like I'm sort of expanding as a writer. And I have to say, in every single day, in the open mic groups and in the support and the groups on Facebook and elsewhere, so many writers that we know mutually and others, just from around the world. Um, as I'm speaking with them and listening to them and sort of getting a little sense of the kinds of journeys that they've been on and the risks they take, I've been able to make myself more vulnerable and try to go into other places. Um, I haven't written as much, for example, as I think I would like to about my experiences in my family. They were, as I remember them, not dire, blessedly, but I still have to work out, especially some stories, some threads with my mother, my late mother. I've started to write about, other members of my family and putting a toe there. I'm writing more, being inspired by different bits and pieces in the news and other kinds of experiences. For a very long time, I've been the kind of person though, that really should come with a warning label because if I'm having a conversation with you and you say something good, that's going in a poem. So I do those kinds of things as well. And so I really am trying to broaden my horizons. I've been quite interested in Stoic philosophy as well. So I'm on the side collecting poems that seem to fall into, um, sort of a title that might be something like What Stands in the Way. And then I'm sort of writing around um, different philosophical threads.
I would think that as an educator, spending time with little children, that must be very, very inspiring.
Yes, it is. It's extremely rewarding, and that sometimes we feel this as parents, I think, and as um, certainly as teachers, because we have such an opportunity to make such an impression, I spend more time with many of those children in my class and always in my classes than they do with their parents awake. So it is really a privilege to be in that position, and I have to think seriously about what I want to represent and how I want to behave with them and what I want to model. And I love that they want to write and that they want to zoom in to an open mic and they want to know the poets that I know and they want to understand what I'm doing. So when they're writing, I'm writing too. And when I'm writing, then they are inspired to write. And we keep that kind of energy going. Yeah, they're very inspiring.
One of my most interesting experiences teaching, because I've taught in private school, I've taught primary grade, I've taught through the college, high school, and then college people, and I've also taught professional grade, or at least older adults. And one of my first experiences teaching a class of children, it was at a Montessori school my kids were going to, and the principal said to me, Rick, you produce events, you do a radio show, you're a writer. Would you consider teaching a class in drama to these third graders through sixth graders? And I said, oh, absolutely. I'd be honored to do that. She said, well, what do you have in mind? What would you do? And I said, well, I can tell you right off, I'm going to have them read Shakespeare. And she said, Shakespeare?
Mine too.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding?
Love it.
What, you have the comic books or something? I said, no. I said, I really believe that if it's effectively presented, there's nothing in what Shakespeare teaches, talks about, discusses, that is not familiar to every human being. And she said, well, but these are kids, Rick. And I said, well, let's think for a second.
No, they're great.
The play, for example, I said, I'm going to start with King Lear. And she looked at me like, are you kidding? She said, that's about some crazy old king. And I said, wait a minute. Let's think about it for a second. I said, the play starts off around the dinner table. There's a king, the father, and his three daughters, and he asks that terrible question in a family that nobody wants to ask, but everybody's wondering, does dad love me more? Do you love dad more? I said, what kid hasn't thought that? And she said, oh, I've never thought of it that way. And I said, I know. I said, now, and the other thing, when it comes to you might say, well, what about maturity? And I said, well, look, if you think about Shakespeare's audience in that Globe Theater, how many of them were literate? 1%? Let's say 5%. Yes. And these were simple plays, morality plays for simple people to understand. And I said, I'll tell you what, you sit with me as we read scene by scene and discuss it. And if you honestly think the kids don't get it, I'll stop. I will.
Thank you.
So we read the first two scenes of Lear around the dinner table, and she gets up and asked me to come outside. And she said, the kids get it. They completely understand. And I said, look, there's words that, are a little weird, a little awkward. I said, but what A doesn't get, B figured out. And what C didn't get, D's figured out. And, the group mind totally got, we ended up doing 5 different plays of Shakespeare. Antony and Cleopatra, Caesar, Lear, anyway. But the kids just loved it. They had such a ball. And of course, at the end of the year, they said, oh, can we do a scene from Shakespeare for the end of the year program? And well, of course, they picked the gross, part with the eye gouge and all that. But that's kids. Kids do that,
Right.
But they just loved it. And I have heard from them now, they're in their 40s. And they have reached out to me and said, it really had an impact. I really, I think of things different that way. And I'm sure that there's not a day that goes by that you don't get that sign of a spark in some child. It's so nourishing.
And you never know where it's going to come from, we in the upper elementary, which I teach now, so that's grades 4, 5, and 6 in the traditional system. The kids loved Hamlet, and they, when we were doing it the last time, a couple of people got a chance to, do some sword fighting, but everybody wanted to try that. And then, of course, so many characters were dying, but, there were a few kids that didn't. But, you had 17 or 20 kids who all wanted to practice dying. And it wasn't just flopping and being ridiculous and falling like sacks of potatoes. It was like, these kids are really good. They're really getting into it. And I'll never forget, it was one of the best things was a boy who was a real mathematician. And he really, I thought, is he really into this? I'll never forget. I said, so come on. So what happens? So what happens to Polonius? Dead. What happens to Gertrude? Dead. What happens to Hamlet? Dead, of course. Dead, of course. And I said, well, who's alive at the end? Horatio. And then another one goes, yes, but one of those messengers from the beginning is still a, they're paying attention. And, I can remember saying to the kids, well, so what's up with Gertrude? She doesn't love him. She just wants power for her son. It was like, okay, well, let's rock and roll. Don't tell me, 10-year-olds don't get what's going on, because they do. It's great.
They absolutely do.
Yeah.
They absolutely do. So many times I think that people underestimate children.
They do.
Tremendously.
They do. One of the best ones ever, years ago, not Shakespeare, but I was reading to the kids Life of Pi. And I said, you know what, boys and girls, when you're in the upper elementary, now you're getting to the point where you're good readers. So you can read not only on this level, but you can start to read the subtext. So we're going to start to talk about these books. And the boy said, Life of Pi is about our inner animal selves. I said, okay, then that'll be, an A+ for you in English 101. And you're 10. Okay. Kids get it. They get it. They just have to be given the chance to try it out and brought along. And my kids, a lot of students can do it if they're in that, that kind of milieu. It comes up in all different kinds of things when you talk about the writer's toolkit as well with students. My students were looking at the timeline of life in our culture studies, and a couple of the girls who are going to be presenting the Quaternary period, so the arrival of humans, the girl said, and she's in grade 6, she said, well, we're making it colorful because human life is colorful. That's a metaphor. Like, oh yes, it is, you're right. Just in the middle of the culture presentation. And that's what we're trying for.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's
it's cool.
wonderful.
It's super cool. And I tell them every day, I'm just blessed to be able to teach, that kind of way, walking around and seeing what kids are doing and doing a few lessons along the line and listening to tall tales and telling a few of my own. And it's great. It's great. I do love classroom teaching for sure.
One more question I have to ask you. We're going to go from school to contemporary days and times.
Mm-hmm.
What is your feeling? What do you think the impact of this Zoom experience is on literature?
Well, maybe it's a strange thing to say, but I think in a way it's brought many more kinds of options to many more people. And it's allowed many more people to dare, I think, to raise their voices, to look in a way as a prospective participant, because all the open mics are always so generous about, come on in, take a look, just stand back, listen in, so happy to have you, come on back. And many people then do. And it feels like maybe a safer way than, going to a cafe or to a stage and suddenly everyone's looking at you going, come on up here, come on up now. I don't know. That's really hard to do. So I feel a little bit of that myself, that I've dared to go where I might, where it might have taken me a lot longer to work up my nerve. And what I hear around me too is a lot of other poets feel the same thing. So I think that's kind of interesting. And Zooming and in general, that whole environment, I've had the opportunity to get to know personally through, as you can through social media, um, and individuals, but certainly their work and many more people and many more styles of work. I I really appreciate that so much. So I think it's in some ways it's been an extremely positive experience.
Yeah, I know a couple of people through Zoom who were very, very shy and very hesitant,
Mhm.
and now have become, should we say, major, well-known international voices of poetry. Friends who I'd known in other arenas
Uh-huh.
saying, "Oh my God, I could never do that," and now they are just out there, and
Yes,
just to see that blossoming. My
absolutely.
other major takeaway is, you know, we can hear from people from South America, from Africa, from Asia,
Mhm.
from Europe. And to me, one of the beauties of it is the human experience is so identical. You know, we're troubled by the same thing, we're worried about the same things, we're thrilled about the same
Yes.
things. And, you know, people who know and have some humanity and to whom humanism is a thing with them, we know this. This is something that we know intellectually. But when you hear the villager from some part of India or someone from a reservation or from Africa talking about the same things that touch our hearts,
Mhm.
that sense of common humanity is just
That's
it's
right.
almost overwhelming
Yes.
sometimes.
Yes, it is. I agree. I agree. It's a real blessing to be able to discover that and in such a such a genuine way. Yeah, I love that too.
How there's this charming dichotomy of COVID has isolated us, but yet COVID has somehow managed to bring us together too.
It has too.
Wow. Yin
Yes,
yang, babe.
yes,
Yin
exactly. And
yang.
with so many people that you would never in a million years, really and truly, ever have encountered in the course of life. It's such a blessing. It is such a blessing.
Well, you, my dear, are a blessing.
Oh,
And
isn't that
I
great?
think I think it's about time that we hear some of the lovely poetry of Miss Marianne.
Well, that would be my pleasure. I might start off by reading a few poems from Full Moon Fire, inspired by love and moonlight. I'll share with you a few poems, short ones, from the full moon section of the book. So those are the deepest, fullest love poems, short and sweet. And you. I want a night, champagne sunset, lips the moon, a million stars, and you. I want a day astride the sea, watercolor kisses tattoo my lips and you. I want a dawn, warm breeze the curtains, well-loved sheets, and you. I want a night, jasmine in a jar, slow dancing, heart to heart, and you.
Oh, that's exquisite.
Thank you. Falling. I write you scented words and send bouquets of dreams while you prune the bushes, filling my heart with roses. Tart thorns and soft petals unite across the ether. In our garden of synchronicity, we are falling together in time. Thank you.
Beautiful.
And,
Just beautiful.
and I'll share one more from the garden called Rose. When I want to hold you, I roam a secret garden. Drunk with summer dreams, I raise a Rose to my lips, thorns yield to my touch, for I know to caress them tenderly as a robin's pearls. Rose blush tints my mind like pale scent from your body when my lashes kiss your thighs. Butterflies thirsting for drops that cling to your moist stem after the dawn rain. Petals unfold against my cheek. Morning dew cools my tongue, and I inhale you. That's Rose.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And then, of course, after the full moon, we have the waning moon. And I would share with you a piece called Kinsukuroi Woman. A friend of mine here in Sint Maarten, who has returned to her country, Turkey, was a ceramicist on the island, and she introduced me to the Japanese art form of kintsugi, broken pieces filled and faired with gold. Torn and thrown to the ground, vessels shorn from careless hands, I am Kinsukuroi Woman. On my face, valleys etched one teardrop at a time. On my back, ashes of cooled passion. On my hands, scars bared beneath faithless promises of gold. Breaks and tears, filled and faired with precious elements, all forgiven like renewed vows. More beautiful for broken, lost, but better so. Patient forgiveness resides in the careful lines of gold that illuminate the damage and become my history. Nothing to disguise in vicissitudes of time. Wrinkles of joy and madness line my living face. They are what makes me beautiful. They are what you call mine. Thank you. Those pieces
Lovely.
will the fire.
Lovely.
Thank you. If you'd like me to share something else.
Oh, please, please. Let me make one other comment. You know,
Yes.
having grown in Western American culture where disposability is the common parlance, the common usage of things, and yet being educated spiritually with the riches of the East, I always had an appreciation for that Japanese appreciation of making the broken whole again.
Yes.
That's always been just one of those little asterisks in my mind. How wonderful, you know, how absolutely creative, how caring, of how respectful of the things and stuff of life. So to hear your poem about it, exquisite, my dear, exquisite.
That broken and more beautiful for broken. I loved that the moment I saw it, and I was so happy to do something with that. I've kept that theme going. I like to write haiku, and I've done. I have the pleasure of working with those topics quite regularly.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. I'd like to share also two poems that are fairly recent, and they have. I've had the pleasure of seeing them published lately. They're inspired by one of my sisters and by my daughter. The first of these was inspired by my sister Michelle, who recently moved from Anchorage, north of Anchorage, Alaska, drove out of Alaska to Whidbey Island, Washington. And as she went, she was telling me about her great love of the sandhill cranes. This is not the first time I look for them, the sandhill cranes, but it might be the last time I see their wise ochre crowns as I drive away from their summer abode and south to mine, a place I cannot yet call home, but I hope for the best, fulfillment of the promise their sighting brings. I have always found cranes on the horizon whenever I needed their generous wings in my sky, feathers torn and stained against forest pines, gray-green amulets from the east, symbols of long life and freedom, theirs and mine. With days ahead behind the wheel, I follow their vigilant example. like the legendary birds who held stones in their beaks to keep themselves asleep on watch. Caffeinated straw between my lips, I admire the sky kings and queens that dance two by two. Their voices rumble across Arctic ponds, and I pray their spirits follow me 2,000 miles, for soon I know I will stand on a raw winter beach and stare into the sea to find my sandhill cranes.
Lovely. Lovely, my dear, lovely. Bravo.
And this poem is called I Dreamed of Dolphins. It's a true story. I did. And this poem was about 27 or 28 years in the coming. My daughter Julia is now 26, and this is a poem for her. I knew you were coming the night I dreamed of dolphins. Walking with your father beneath moonlit veils of Spanish moss, so unlike the icy drapes that cascaded from our northern roofs, I had gazed with joy and awe so many years before as those sleek coursers sign curved up the broad river. That night I stood on boulders, staring into a sea the color of pecans. From a depth where even my night mind knew no air breather could ascend, I watched a dolphin fly toward the surface. Mesmerized by that determined arrow, I stared as into a hand mirror when the dolphin stood tall on his silver flukes, held me for an indelible instant in the full sunshine of his gentle smile, then bent his strong neck and kissed me on the cheek. Unpleating my body in one move, I sat up, sure like tropical dawn that bursts from dream to daylight. I knew as I have never known anything before or since. You were coming the night I dreamed of dolphins.
How lively. Lovely.
Thank you. And sure
Very
enough,
nice.
about 3 weeks after that dream, I returned from Beaufort, South Carolina, the Broad River, and I was indeed pregnant with my only child, Julia.
How nice.
Thank you.
How very nice. That's lovely. May I offer you one?
Of course, with pleasure.
This is one. I want to tell you this dream one because you spoke so eloquently of your dream-inspired piece. I've studied dreams for a long, long time. I keep a dream journal. I write down as many, even just fragments, to train myself to keep those. And this one came so clear and so vivid. And the ancients always tell us that vivid dreams are so important. And I found myself in this dream where I was both a creature and I was watching the creature. I was a lion dog, a ceremonial trained dog who guards a temple. Okay, there is a lion dog that is used to guard temples in Asia. I didn't know it at the time, but my spirit somehow learned that. So this is this dream called Temple Lion Dog. Flying o'er the temple zounds, I watched the sacred lion dog roam the garden fair and temple grounds. His patrol, punctuated with barks and growls, I watched in interest from high above, because you see that lion dog was also me. During his training to patrol the temple grounds, he'd been given special barks, charmed with ancient magic sparks. Every bark a prayer, his barks profound. These sigils gleamed and glowed in the air. Full power beams unbounded blare. Sacred barks these powers made. Such sounds profound commandeth any shade. Few are aware the subtle war that shrieks beyond the temple door. Sweet in the temple, souls seek solace, sanctuary, peace. This glory is only part of the story. Deep sounds, profound, rich in power bound. The lion dog protects the souls that come for sanctuary there amid the scrolls. much more than solace, a palace so bright, a torch and deep in the sacred temple light. Yet, just outside, sometimes wicked ghouls who would disturb the troubled sleep of souls who need the temple's sacred peace. The lion dog protects and guards the deep. While I flew or observed and watched, the lion dog patrolled and never stopped. My vantage point soared from high o'erspread and suddenly pivot, peering, darting, diving deep inside the lion dog's head. I watched as dangerous spirits drifted past, almost to dare and try at last against the temple walls and gardens pierced, had not the sacred lion dog been so fierce. As lion dog, I strolled the garden's border, warned them off, sure they'd spun some macabre disorder. Some might scoff as I watched the garden's border, warned them off, sure they'd spawn some macabre disorder. Some might scoff as I watched the lion dog drive them off. These drifting spirits, mischief sought, would float by dreaming lest the lion dog stop. The lion dog barked and warned them away. They'd flee his massive jaws. These shades would shrink before his awesome law, keeping demons from the grounds. His guardianship was more powerful than mortal eye might see, any mortal ear bear sound. Which shades these wizards sent the temple to dissemble, that thereby acolytes might shriek and tremble, though the enemies of the temple crow and bray. That's why our patrolling lion dog in his sacred voices say, we are trained for courage, on sacred blessed food are nourished. Thus our strong walls protect us, that the temple might flourish. While I watch, guard our grounds from villains and demons, which I knew and sensed even when they were scarcely seen. The lion dog bounds across the grounds, patrolling the temple from any noisome sound. I watched as the villains try to worry, shake the gentle vibrations of this sacred place. While I on patrol spotted villains, nor am bound to face them and shame their fear. My barking was mocked in air by floating sacred sigils, like monks making the ancient scrolls and vigils. These floated in as if marking barking signals. As lion dog I marked the border. A sacred guardian protects the ancient order.
Wow, 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 wow. That's extraordinary.
And I saw this whole thing, and I see this temple and all
Oh
the
my
accoutrements,
gosh.
and every time this dog would bark, there'd be a signal, a symbol in the air glowing bright, because it's the prayer is a bark in this particular universe. Very interesting stuff. Well,
Beautiful.
I wanted to entertain you just a little bit as you have entertained me so much. How about
I,
another one of Marianne's, huh?
with pleasure. I've shared a couple of poems from Full Moon Fire and a couple of family poems. I'm also inspired by friends and the things they say. Maybe I can share a couple of those if the time allows. Let me just find this. Um, a friend was telling me some time back about we were reminiscing about university, and he was telling me about how to say it, a time in college when we were seeking beyond books for knowledge,
Yes.
and he had a lovely experience with a lovely woman. And I'd like to share this poem that inspired that, called
Wonderful.
God's Will. It must have been God's will. Those champagne afternoon in beds among roses whose flattened petals now tumble from the pages of my Ferlinghetti. I had never been a believer, but she whose name translates directly made me entertain the foreign notion of divine intervention. With long brown hair that strove to brush her waist, long dark lashes that grazed my skin so gratefully, undeterred, perhaps even inspired by our initial lack of a mutual tongue. Her long brown legs embraced her American dream, and not a word was lost in translation.
Lovely. Lovely.
Mhm. Um, so there's a particular piece, and I I have been writing, I've been doing some writing about St. Martin, and I'd like to share a poem that is certainly inspired by place where I live, but also by the words of a friend from a landlocked country who mentioned that he has never seen the ocean. And of course, I had to take those words and do something with them. Is it true, love? You have never seen the ocean? You come from an ancient land locked away from the sea, where the first hunters roamed in waist-high grass and climbed for days to the tops of cloud-wreathed mountains. Now you stand here on the edge of a new land, birthed from ancient volcanic hips, cradled in the waves where the first fishers dove through spindrift to forage plains of turtle grass. True love, you have never seen the ocean run beside her with languid steps, outracing footprints indelible only for the time between the crests that endlessly erase the shore? Seen the sun caress the horizon, strewing rubies and diamonds that dissolve into the sea with a flash of phosphorescent green? Is it true, love, you have never seen the ocean, plunged beneath the waves to bathe in her timeless caress, and leaped through the surface, your smile effervescent as you raise your chin, your mighty locks fling prismatic water fans into our luminous moonset? Is it true, love, you have never seen the ocean? Here you will write windswept poems, breathing in the salty exhalations of our restless mother. By night, the stars will crown my hair, candelabrum around my head, shining on our table in the sand where we dine on each other. Long and lingering feast as Aldebaran and Rigel arc across the sky and the waves kiss our bare feet. True love, you have never seen. Thank you.
Oh, that's exquisite. That's exquisite. If they hadn't seen the ocean before, then you helped them see the ocean.
I hope so.
Oh, if they were in the middle of Kansas, they would see the ocean from that poem. That's for sure.
Thank you, Rick.
We need to sort of wrap up. You want to come up with maybe one more poem to leave? I mean, I would almost leave with that one. That was just so amazing.
If you would not mind, I would love to stop right there. Yes.
Well, God bless you. The goddess bless you. Gaia is with you. Thank you so much. What a lovely, lovely poet you are, my dear. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Rick. Thanks to you. And I'd really like to tell you just one more thing. I am going to find my way to Franny's Vegan Cafe. I am vegan. And every time I see that post, I think, what's for dinner? Maybe I can get down there. Oh, well, okay. Best get a flight. But one of these days, I will be right there dining with you on vegan chow and a poem with all pleasure.
Well, that's so wonderful. Franny is the dearest, dearest soul, and she's so sweet and so welcoming. And people come in there, and she just surrounds them with her love and their wonderful food. And it's such an amazing, amazing place. When we first met them, we sat down and talked for a long time, and she said, why don't you bring your poetry here? So now, 2 years later, every first and last Friday of the month, we're there with poetry, and poets have begun to gather, and it's just tremendous. My dear, thank you, Marianne.
Rick, the pleasure has been mine. Thank you so much. There's the blessing there that I was invited to join you. Thank you so much.
Okay. You have a wonderful evening under the stars with the scent of the sea all around you.
Indeed.
Good night.
Thank you, Rick. Good night. Good night, everyone.